And
then
then
I can go back and share, right? Thank you. Yeah, so anybody teach on Zoom? It's an experience, right? All right, so now I have to go back and share. What am I sharing now? Oh, okay. All right, did that share, guys? Are we seeing this? No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So is the mission statement there? Because that's not what, and is it the PowerPoint or does it look like a slide?
It looks like the actual PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Looks like the PowerPoint. I think if you go down to that little icon right next to where the zooming area is, looks like
Yeah.
a little, I think if you click that, then it turns into a slide.
Okay. How's that?
It's good.
We're good. Okay. All right, here we go. So we wanted to show a bigger scope because we have grown, and that's when we changed our our vision statement to helping the world feel better, one breath at a time. And as I mentioned, we are opening up the outpatient behavioral health services starting the second week of November. And there's some of you I would really be happy to talk with as we move that. We are going to prove that here in Boca and then expand throughout the nation where we have classes. So we're really excited about that because that'll give us a more full complement of care for our veterans. So that's what's happening related to that. So for those of you who know, I'm not going to bore you with the history, but let's just say I was inspired. For those who don't know, I was inspired by Bo McVane, as you see there, a former Army Ranger. And when he came home from his last deployment, he was diagnosed with ALS down at the Miami VA hospital. And his doctor was really forward thinking and suggested that he learn yoga to breathe and move. And so for me, I was honored to work with him and his family for over 2.5 years till he passed. So the work that I did with Bo, with the yoga therapy, as well as watching a movie called The Hurt Locker, was the inspiration behind starting Connected Warriors. And that movie, The Hurt Locker, my takeaway was our warriors are present in chaos and they're not trained to be present in peace. And I turned to my husband after I left the theater and I told Jeff, I said, hey, you know, I can fix that. My husband is a veteran from the Air Force back in the early 80s. So it was during peacetime, really, the Cold War, and it was not the experiences that our current veterans are dealing with, or our Vietnam veterans. And Ralph Iovino, you see his picture, I taught him to be a yoga teacher a few years before, and asked Ralph to bring veterans and I would teach free classes. So that's how Connected Warriors began. And so today we'll really talk about the military institutional, the culture of it, the biological impacts of MST, and the consequences for that is impact that trauma conscious yoga can affect wellness and how that all works. What is an empowered yoga class? We made that up. There's a group of us at Connected Warriors. We're working on a class playlist. And what is the intention for this class? And what we really said was it truly is empowering. We want this class to have the effect of empowerment upon our students who attend there. And so the hope is that you will have enough information where you will feel comfortable to teach an empowered yoga class. So the reason this slide is here is always the reminder, because the body has really 3 priorities. Its primary objective is survival, period. That's really it. It will do anything. It will compromise anything to survive. And with that, the rules of the body are we stand on 2 feet, we walk, right? And our eyes have to see the horizon. So that's pretty much the rules of this body. And with those basic rules, we will move forward in this. So everybody, just wherever you are, sit or lay down and allow yourself to feel grounded. You can keep your eyes open, you can close them, whatever that is best for you, okay? And I just want you to have a sense of being grounded. And what that means for our purposes is literal, feeling the ground underneath you. And if you're sitting, maybe it's underneath what is touching the ground. If you're standing, it would be your feet. If you're lying down, it would be the entire back body. And notice 3 conscious breaths here. That is simply an inhale and an exhale. And notice your connection to the groundedness of your physical body as you inhale and as you exhale. And 2 more, just awareness, pure awareness of how you're feeling and what you're feeling, without judgments, without expectations, or even identification, just pure awareness. And simply allow. When you're ready, gently open your eyes and understand my philosophy is we are energetic beings having this human experience. Every living creature on this planet has had trauma. It does not mean that you have PTS. It simply means we've all had trauma. Okay. So that's our starting place. So perspective. I'm all about perspectives. So military sexual trauma, as you can see, this is pictures of war. At the bottom left is Vietnam. That's that famous picture from Vietnam. Bottom right is the Civil War. The top left is in a barracks somewhere, and the top right is in Afghanistan. This has been with us since they first saw the first report was at the Civil War about military sexual trauma of some sort, of really military sexual abuse. And so the current cases are still 1 in 3 women, 1 in 5 men. They don't really know the numbers because sadly it is the most underreported incident that happens. Okay. They estimate 81% of men in the military do not report this. So the next perspective is, what is the family? What is the culture? Well, the culture consists of, this is everything. This is where you live. It's where you work. It's where your friends are. It's everything about your entire life moving forward in the military. And now your new family is 84% male and 16% female, where the general population in the civilian world is 51% female and 48% male. Just imagine that dynamic difference and how you show up. One of the key military strategies is the dehumanization of the enemy, so that it allows a service member, especially in combat, to actually pull the trigger in combat. And what that does is it creates that environment of you're part of the group or you're out of the group. So it's a tribe. It's our largest tribe, I think, probably in the world, of our military members, then become veterans. And even the family members kind of fit in that same role. And so you're either in or you're out of that. And what that does over time, it actually depersonalizes and devalues the individual feelings, emotions, and boundaries of individuals. And so you become part of the unit. And it changes then how you respond. Diane Williams, she's our regional out in California. She said this to me many, many years ago. She said, There's such a difference between the military mindset and a warrior mindset. So the military mindset is that which I just described, where a warrior mindset would be that person who doesn't allow the individual feelings, boundaries, or their own agency to be affected too much, so that you get to make certain choices. And that's the balance here. So the disconnection piece is big in that when you leave this military family unit and now you're no longer attached to it and you move out into the civilian world, it changes. So that's the first disconnection. The next disconnection that occurs is the actual separation from the feelings and emotion of war, training, combat, or any of that deployment piece. The issue from the question becomes is why is military sexual trauma so much greater, I think, injury on a human being? And it has a lot to do with the fact that you are in an environment that's everything. You're everything, and you have nowhere to go. So it gives you that sense almost of captivity. Who do you go talk to? Where do you go? Everybody you know is there. And so that gives it a different aspect and a stronger injury that goes on. Okay. Yeah, so I really don't want, there's not too much more to say about that. I want to just say in general combat, the terror is the fight, flight, and the flee is the response. The attacker is stranger. It's the enemy, right? Where rape is, the terror is from the freeze response because you're in protection mode, you can't respond. And the attacker is your family, it's your military family. It's your brothers in arms. It's that person who got your six. Yeah, so that's, I think, the severity aspect. Jonathan Gottschall, he wrote a paper called Explaining Wartime Rape. And in this, he came up with this equation. And it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it. And so it ends up being this equation, and you guys will get this PowerPoint after, so if you don't have to take photos of everything, but it really is, you're motivated, they're motivated by the unlearned sex drive and the drive to possess and control. The natural selection is another big piece. Men easily learn force tactics and are more inclined to resist force tactics than women. The tendency to use force tactics is a function of the strength of the sex drive, plus the probability of success of it, achieving the goal, sadly, minus the probability of punishment, which in our military has not been high until recently, it's growing. And you divide all that by your, pretty much your aversion to that stimulus. And so that's kind of how he characterized it. And he added to that the genetic disposition of the Y chromosomes, which is evolved into the neurohormone functions, which is the driver of the sex drive. Okay, so that's kind of that clinical definition of what happens, or maybe why. So this perspective is based upon, I look at the military was really the start of the Me Too movement because they spoke up. After 1991, after the Tailhook event, the conference, they started speaking up. And it was in the paper and there was conversation finally. Now, it didn't particularly go too far, but at that time, but it started the conversation. So what that was, if you're not familiar, it was a US military rape scandal, and 83 women and 7 men were sexually assaulted by over 175 officers in Las Vegas. So that's kind of what started it. Okay. So what is military sexual trauma? You can read this, but I would like to share with you the VA's, let me put that somewhere. Okay, the VA's definition, which is a little bit shorter. Let's see if I can move this guy. Okay, So the VA uses the term military sexual trauma, MST, to refer to sexual assault or harassment experienced during military service. MST includes any sexual activity that you are involved with against your will, for example, being pressured or coerced into sexual activities such as threats of negative treatment if you refuse to cooperate, or with promises of better treatment in exchange. Someone having sexual contact with you without your consent when you were either asleep or intoxicated, being physically forced to have sex, or being touched in any sexual way that made you uncomfortable, or repeated comments about your body or sexual activities. So that is the VA's definition, which is slightly broader than the US military code. Okay. The statistical history piece of this conversation is just to let you know where things have been, if you looked at that. But what's good is, out of the tailhook, the Army has a Mind's Eye 2. It's a leading training for prevention. The Navy has what they call 21st Century Sailor Office. That is the Navy Digital Warfare and Center for Naval Analysis. They are doing pilot programs. The Marines have started primary prevention operations planning team, and they have updated their bystander intervention. The Air Force has an installation community action teams. They've created a toolkit Green Dot program, and the National Guard has 17 Air National Guard wings. They are using the SAPR program to build infrastructure. So there are new hotlines that are out there now because they're getting that they have to do something about this. This was the 2018 report. The DoD is making changes. The concern is still retaliation is still prevalent. And they're creating a task force to address male sexual assault because, again, 81% underreported. They're setting up training advocates, and they're working to increase training at the command level. The quote I have is, "We will not be deterred from our mission to eliminate sexual assault from the military. The approaches we employed to achieve progress over the past several years must now change. We will not rest until all service members serve in environments of dignity and respect." So they're stepping up. So in this, PTSD is 9 times higher with MST than without. PTSD is 5 times higher than MST than civilian sexual assault. PTSD is higher in MST groups than combat trauma. And at the highest risk demographic age-wise, period, is enlisted females 19 to 24 years of age. Okay. So again, Judith Herman, she has a trauma theory. She's applied it to the military, and it includes the characteristics of trauma, the terror, disconnection, and captivity elements, and the pre-existing trauma because you are predisposed already based upon childhood or previous trauma, significant traumas. You can see the body-mind outcomes. The body has very specific things that happen from MST. The mind has other aspects, none of which are beneficial to a fully functional, healthy individual. And guys, I didn't say this before, but if you have anything you want to add, just chime in, because as you know, I'm having troubles with that whole bar. So I know there's a chat thing. I don't know if I could even get to it. So just putting that out there. All right. So the gender consequences. So we know the males are the highest. Well, the females are the second highest unreported crimes in the military. That's really sad to think about that. So males are 81%, females are 67%. And you can read the reasons why. It's because of confidentiality, but it's really about the retribution is the issue, is at least the best I can figure out. And if you read some of the testimonials, you really can, it brings that home. So I know everybody in this has been through a trauma training of some sort. So just as a repeat, let me give you an example of coronavirus, right? We started this whole pandemic we're living under in March. I don't know when anybody started it before that. I flew to Sedona on March the 9th, fully intending to teach a trauma training at Sedona Yoga Festival. And my family was really, really against me going because there was word conversation around, oh, this new virus and this, that, and the other. But yet there was no federal mandate to not travel, you know, within the United States, and there was no big push about any of it. So I proceeded to go about my merry way. Well, now here we are in almost November, and we're still living with this. And this is akin to the concept of chronic stress and trauma, because we don't know what the end date is. It's still here 6 months. So there is an element for us to, any of us in the planet, to be dealing with PTS related to the coronavirus. Trauma is literally anything that overwhelms our ability to cope. And I don't know about you guys, but my coping at the beginning of this was buying all this crap on Facebook or wherever it was, because it was like I had time and I'm scrolling and there it is. And so I actually created a workshop recently, a teaching about using all this stuff I purchased, but just understanding that element of how significant it is. PTS is that uncontrollable anxiety. So we know that if you have a physical injury, the body takes care of it without our cognitive getting involved, but we tend to get involved. So you have to just know that. Trauma-informed, sensitive, conscious. You know, we see all of this. David Emerson really started this out when he wrote his book, and it was termed trauma sensitive. I'm a stickler for words, and I think that words have a lot of meaning. They have a physical vibration, and you can feel that. So words are really important to me. When I think about calling this program, originally the protocol, what am I going to call this? I didn't really feel sensitive. I didn't connect to the sensitive, and I didn't connect to informed either. I'm a big person to believe in, you give somebody fish, they will eat today. But if I teach you how to fish, you will eat forever, and you will be able to share that. So to me, at the root of healing from trauma is the conscious awareness of trauma and how is it affecting your body. And then you can take and make choices to heal yourself, to change behaviors, to change patterns. And it really is a conscious effort. One of the things I hear more working with people who are dealing with trauma, teachers who are dealing with trauma, is the survivor says, I wish I understood. When MSD happened, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the shooting there, and I worked with some of the students and teachers and just the community, that was probably the single biggest thing I could bring to them, is their understanding that what they were feeling inside their body and in their mind was a natural occurrence after a traumatic event. And that was what they were saying is, I wish I understood that a month ago, or whatever the time period was, because at some point you just think you don't know, you're crazy, you're nuts, you just don't know, I'm wrong, I shouldn't feel this, and all the monkey chatter takes over. So to me, informed means you know something. I know that, okay? But how are you sharing that with your students? Sensitive typically means the doing part. It means that you see as a teacher and you're sensitive and you can respond in a way. Consciousness means you're actually teaching them something that they can learn and take to the next level, because that to me is the start of post-traumatic growth, is that conscious awareness. So let's talk a little bit about trauma in just a general space. So natural or human-caused trauma. Human-caused trauma is a much deeper trauma groove than any natural disaster. And it has to do with our connection to each other, and especially imagine in your family, and your family is the military. Okay. And within those natural or human cause, you will have individual, group, and mass trauma. And so I just want you to ask yourself, is MST in all three groups? I kind of think it is in a sense, in a sense, because individually, yes, it's definitely an individual, an effect. In a group, yes, if you think of the military in totality as a group, and then mass, the tail hook was a mass. So it is in there. And I wanted to add, okay, now let's go. So the types of trauma: single, complex, secondary, vicarious. I'm not going to go deep into that at all, actually, because I think a lot of you guys already know quite a bit of this. But let me just remind you, each of you here who is a teacher, be very, very aware that you can pick up secondary and vicarious trauma working with, working with your, working with your students. And I actually found where this chat, the toolbar is. So if you guys want to do chat, you can, because I can actually find it now. So let's bring that out there. So understanding that, be really mindful. And all I can say is your self-care is your priority as a teacher, as a therapist, as a social worker, in any of the space where you hold energy. Okay. Trauma tribes. So just yourself, think about how many tribes do you belong to? I know I sit in a few of them myself. You know, we probably sit, all of us sit in multiple ones. And these are just the trauma tribes. You also have your other tribes. You have your family tribe. You have your work tribe. You have your hobby tribe. Maybe you have your workout tribe. Maybe you have your people from school, from college, from wherever, right? And you belong to a lot of these different tribes. And the key is, I just want everybody to understand, we're all in this together because we all have had trauma and we are tribal by nature. So it's good to feel those connections because you can work within that. And that, I think, is really important. So when you think about the life itself is not easy. And this is a tool that you can teach your students so that they can help navigate their life a little bit easier. So PTSD, Connect to Warriors, we chose to drop the D a long time ago because if I have a disorder, I would be in a box. And I don't want to be in a box because that makes it a little too easy to drop out of life because you're in a box. Oh, what do I mean by hate survived? So survivors of hate crimes, white supremacy,
Okay.
KKK, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. Genocide. So we chose to drop the D because we didn't want our warriors to feel like they're in a box. Now, the good news is because it is in the DSM so that you can get treatment under insurance and all of that. But know that if you have trauma, the immediate thing after is post-traumatic stress. It's automatic, it's biological, it's natural occurring. And then it could turn into the PTSD diagnoses, all right? Now, CPTSD is the developmental trauma that arises from childhood trauma. That is significantly difficult to heal from. It's in that category of complex trauma. And that is the one category Bessel told me when I was working with him that you can never do silent meditation with. So just know that when you work with individuals with childhood trauma, it is such a significant trauma groove that it takes just a long, long time and a lot of patience to work through that. So with PTSD, versus MST. So Vietnam, 30.9% combat PTSD, and that was versus women, 29.3% military sexual trauma for women, and that was Vietnam. Persian Gulf, 12.1% combat-related PTSD. MST, 49% men, 50% women. OIF, OEF, 13.8% combat PTSD, and 60% women MST. So the rape trauma syndrome, it is the psychological trauma that disrupts your normal physical, emotional, cognitive, and interpersonal behavior. So that is, they created a second category for that. All right. And I think that is really relevant from a diagnosis standpoint, from a yoga therapist standpoint. To me, the most important is the childhood piece. So the trauma manifestations, these are things that can happen. And we talked about, I showed you the slide before of what happens with MST, the biological outcomes. You have the body and you have the mind and how they're different. This is kind of just a general for PTSD in general. Trauma groove. So the body is physically hijacked. That's what happens when you get triggered. And the elements within the trauma groove age, which is the maturity of the nervous system or an immature nervous system. So the younger you are, the deeper the groove. The control aspect, which is the level of the lack of control you have or the lack of choice. The frequency, which it could be singular or multiple, depends on individual people. So you're born with a certain level of resiliency in your nervous system. And granted, it is an immature nervous system at birth, but it has its own epigenetic qualities about that. And the less resilient you are, obviously, you may not need frequent. You may not need multiple events to create that deep, deep trauma groove for you, where somebody who might have been born with a very strong, resilient nervous system, they may actually need multiple events or a much longer term to create that PTS aspect. The severity event, same thing. And then the last piece is the senses, the hierarchy of your six senses, because I think that is a huge component. And the six senses of your sight, your sound. If we had a traumatic event right now, which I had at one time teaching a Zoom class, my regular CW class, and this is back before Zoom put in more protection, we got bombed by a lot of porn and yelling and screaming, and it was horrific. So that kind of an event, it could be visually horrible for me or auditorily horrible for maybe one of you, because we all have a higher sense. Our senses have a hierarchy individually. Okay. Smell, however, is the one thing that bypasses all of the processes and goes straight into the brain to come back to the emotional center. And so that's why smell is so important to selling your house. You want to bake some cookies or bake some apples, and you have that sense when you walk into a home to purchase, oh, that's grandma's home, and you feel safe and comforted. But the same flip side is the smell can trigger you to the other side. So trauma groove in the brain, the biggest takeaway is understanding the developmental cycle. So as we grow, you come out of the womb and your right side of the brain, right hemisphere, is really developed pretty well. Your brainstem, of course, your primitive brain is developed well. Your left side develops stronger after you have speech and you can identify individual aspects. Your corpus callosum starts to really develop by the age of 8, more or less, and the whole body brain develops by the age of 30. When we look at our service members that were deployed after 9/11, 60% were deployed under the age of 29. So that if you think about that, it really speaks to all of their experiences are become part of that clay. And that clay is at birth, you're this beautiful clay ball. You start creating a clay pot of your life. And in that growth and that life and environment and everything about it, you create grooves, trauma, everything, good, bad, and the ugly, all create these grooves. So now at the age of about 29, you put yourself in the kiln and you fire it. And so now you have this beautiful individual clay pot that is uniquely you, but it has some rough grooves, trauma grooves around that. And so how do you diminish the grooves so you can get out of your own way, so to speak? Well, that's what trauma conscious yoga and any trauma modalities are working to do. And what I call trauma conscious yoga, it's the finest sandpaper known to man. And all you're doing is taking 1 grain of sand off at a time, smoothing these grooves. Because if you took a hammer and chisel, you will break the pot. And that is the opposite of what we would like to do. So the brain, just a summary, at birth, you pop out with that primitive and the right hemispheres. And so I want to bring it to the limbic system. So the limbic system is this part. And in this section, you have the various individual pieces parts. So the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the basal ganglia, and the cingulate gyrus. So of those parts, that's all about the limbic system, which we know is our emotional pieces. Well, it influences your endocrine system. So what you think, energy follows thought, is going to affect your endocrine system. And your endocrine system is your chief pharmacist. Okay, that's your chief chemist in your body. So the autonomic nervous system is all attached to all of that. So just remember that this is all connected in a big way. So your limbic system also coordinates the sensory information with your movements. So that's your hand-eye coordination, it's your proprioception, there's a bit of the proprioception piece of it. So I think of that as the Amkara mind. As we move down, and we'll talk more about that, is how do you change, right? These samskaras, how do we change these habitual patternings? Your neocortex, that is your cerebral cortex, and that's where your perception, your executive function, where you make decisions, where you plan things, all of that. It also regulates your behavior, and it mediates the ability of, is this real or not real? And that really is developed by the age of 25. So imagine if you're 18 years old and you go into the military, you're not fully developed in your cognitive processing. And I look at, and I know I'm digressing, but I look at these kids and these shootings that go on in schools. And these children are children, even if they're 18 years of age, they are still children, and they do not have full functioning aspects. So it makes me really sad when I see them being tried as adults, because even adults at 21 are really not fully formed either. So I don't know what a solution is to that, but just bear that in mind. So that part of your brain is your manas mind. So that's the external part of you. And your booty mind, which is that deepest part of who you really are, that is your primitive brain. It knows. Now, the thing with that is the other aspect of your brain stem and that whole spinal column is at the root of it. So that sits with what we call Mula Bandha. It sits with our lowest chakra, right? And in that lowest chakra is our belief system. So that is where it's not only a physical, it's that emotional, and it's a cognition of what it take away from your life, from your history, from your family, everything you've learned and know. And so as you develop, as I said, this here, your corpus callosum, as Bessel calls it, your mohawk, it is developed pretty much by the time you're 8. And when you're born, you have the most synapses ever. If anybody saw the I guess it's a concert called American Utopia by David Byrne from the Talking Heads, I just recently saw it. It's brilliant, especially his first song, because he actually takes this really complex idea and he makes it super, super simple to understand, about pointing about the section in the regions of the brain and what it all does. And he talks about the pruning piece. So one of the things he says is infants are smarter than adults because of the aspect of they have all of these synapses, more than you'll ever have, and that the critical period of time is before you're 2 years old. And so at 2 years old,
Not only did I think
if you've had trauma,
not only did I think this was yesterday, but it was on Easter.
hello? Hi, are you newly joining us? Can you put yourself on mute, please? So the critical period of the childhood trauma is before the age of 2, because once trauma occurs, a significant trauma, you no longer grow synapses and you no longer connect the synapses. And the pruning starts about 25 years old. So it's literally, you use it or lose it. And the synapses are critical for the neuroplasticity about us, the ways of creating detours, neural pathways. We talk about that. It's talked about a lot nowadays. Okay, good. I'm sorry about that, guys. So your mind body, the corpus callosum, is critical for trauma recovery. I would say building the bridge is by 8, and traumatic events break or damage the bridge. So they've proven, many tests, many surveys, studies have proven that you can actually reconstruct and repair the bridge from mindfulness practices. And that's what's so important and valuable. I don't care what you call your mindfulness practice, so long as you're doing it, you will help yourself heal. So the nervous system, everybody's talking about the nervous system anymore. And the important part to understand is the central nervous system, you really don't have a lot of control over. It kind of does what it does as far as access, and it controls movement, it controls what you don't have. It has all that ability, but hold on, what I just did. But the peripheral nervous system is the one we really want to work with. That's our sensory nervous system. And we want to think about how can you can think about your whole being, your mind body is your house. And in your house, you operate at 110. So your electricity to run your computer, your lights, you keep that going all the time. And that we know is our parasympathetic, that's our rest and digest, right? Well, now you have I need to run the dryer. I need to have more power. So then you turn on your 220. Well, that would be like shifting over to the sympathetic nervous system and turning that on. But the key is you don't want to live there because you don't need the dryer 24/7. But what's happened with us is we have evolved to the place where we no longer have an auto switch to turn that on and off. It goes on really well. Your sympathetic goes on because the body responds to threat in that way. It's the opposite way to dial it back down, to self-regulate yourself back down to that place of rest and digest. In the animal kingdom, non-humans, they still have that auto switch. So if a gazelle's being chased by a lion, all of the ancillary system shuts down immediately, and they're just in the sympathetic to keep yourself safe. Well, when the gazelle is safe, all of those systems turn back on automatically. We have to learn how do we turn it back on, okay? Our enteric nervous system, I think, is so critical because it's the one that is in your brainstem. It's the spinal column brainstem, and it's the one that can actually operate without any of your other prefrontal cortex. It can keep yourself going because that's what keeps yourself going. The brain receives this information through your chemical and your electrical systems. And so it sends out more messages, the brain sends out more messages to the body to move. And it gets all of these inputs constantly because that's what we are, a bunch of sensors. So it's constantly getting all these inputs, but it only sends out motion, movements. And the somatic system, the somatic aspect of us, its focus is not to tap into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. It's simply to create that awareness of a new sensor. Oh, okay, I can feel that. And then you can choose what to do about it, which I think is the important part, okay? So the pelvic abdominal brain, or the enteric nervous system, is the one that really is it's a cooperative system between the sensory and the motor of us. And our biorhythms from trauma get disrupted, and it's another way to come back to that, to come back to a new rhythm, or a rhythm for you that may not ever go back to where you were before significant trauma, but it will come back to a healthier place. So your enteric nervous system, this is your muscling through aspect, which we all know we can do. If you remember back in college, having to cram for a final, you did whatever you needed to do to stay up late at night to study everything because you didn't study anything, or to write that paper or the thesis you needed to do, and you waited to the very end. That muscling through aspect is what we can do, but there's a price that you pay for that when you muscle through, because you certainly can override your enteric or your pelvic abdominal brain, but the price you pay is that you can get stuck there. And so you learn, how do you maybe play nicer with yourself and just make better decisions for long-term sustainability if you have a big project. Me, I procrastinate like crazy for everything. So I'm always up till like the next day to finish a project. And one of my goals this year is to maybe stop that a little bit, because then I crash for 2 or 3 days. And that is the same aspect of, has anybody ever gone on vacation and when you came home, you needed a vacation from your vacation? Well, that comes from the fact that when you're on vacation, and yes, you're having a great time, hopefully you're having a really good time, but everything is new, unless you go to the same place over and over, but everything is new. And so you're on, imagine your nervous system is stimulated all of the time. You're having a great time, but you're on, you're in your 220. Well, when you come home and now you're in your familiar, and the rest and digest kind of goes the other way of, now I'm going to crash because I was on for so long, and now I really need to just rest, and I have no more energy because I expended it all. Okay, so you want to just think about that. The other piece that I feel is important to understand is that your gut produces 90% of your serotonin and 50% of your dopamine, which is your body's value. So when the gut is not functioning properly, then you're not going to access those chemicals that keep you or shift you back into your parasympathetic or back into your rest and digest. And have you ever heard the old sayings, you know, you're heart sick, or I've got butterflies? Barbara Streisand she's famously known for throwing up before every performance, because she feels so deeply and so strongly about her craft and her ability to perform at the level she wants to. It's all in her gut, and there it is. So just knowing that your body is got all of the information all of the time, it is 100% right, and the thinking mind is usually wrong. So I go with that when I talk to my students. I listen to your body. This is usually not going to go in the right direction. So from an electrical and a chemical standpoint, your body literally is a chemistry set. And I wanted to, in your manual. You can read it later, or you can just know. So the spinal movement is what feeds your brain. And I think this is a huge part of what happens as we age in varying neurological diseases like Parkinson's and even Alzheimer's. So 90% of the brain's nutrition and stimulation comes from spinal movement. So move your spine in all 6 directions every day. I don't care what you call it. The brain energy, what does it do? Well, 90% of the output of your brain's energy fights gravity on a physical level. 10% is for metabolism and healing. So again, we're geared to move. Our bodies are meant to move. Your stress management is your reduced adrenaline and cortisol. That's what its job is, and increases your neurotransmitters. Serotonin, which we know, happiness feeling, 90% of that is generated by your gut. GABA, which reduces your neuronal excitability. It's your volume. Dopamine, which I said is generated by the gut, and your and I always say this wrong. Your norepinephrine is your mood and your behavior regulator. So acetylcholine lowers your heart rate. So all of these aspects are in the good side of what happens when you have a mindfulness practice that includes spinal movement. The release of your natural opiates happens, as well as the increased oxytocin. And that comes from being in a community of like-minded people, having a good time and being happy. So those aspects, that's what's happening in the chemistry set of you. And how do you get in there? Conscious breath and movement. That is the doorway into the nervous system. I would say conscious breath for sure is the way to open the door to the nervous system. But without the conscious breath and movement, you're not walking across the threshold. And the key is you've got to walk across the threshold. And I believe in seated meditation. I know that the end goal for a long-time yoga practitioner and a full-bodied yoga practice includes the ability to sit with yourself, by yourself, without employing any of the 1,000 strategies that we all have. That is the end goal. Well, how do you get there? And a lot of people start there, and they're missing the other parts, and it all plays together. So it's just important to remember that aspect. So let's talk specifically MST, the brain, and the nervous system. And you can read all those pieces, but just Porges, Stephen Porges is brilliant. You want to focus on the aspect of the polyvagal theory, which is really what this is, and I summarized it for you guys. So you have a safety. The safety part of us is the vagus nerve. You know, it really is that. It's when everything, you're living in your parasympathetic. It's when your social engagement system is working correctly. You can self-regulate, you're relaxed, you're having fun, you can connect to people, you have the ability to have deep breathing, you have a normal or your normal slow heart rate, and you can really communicate well. So that's a sign of being in the safety zone. Now you move into the danger zone, which is when you get triggered for something or there is a literal threat. And that's when the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, right? So something's going to happen. And that's where the fight flight comes into play. You become hyper aroused. You start to move away because the brain does not want anything to do with pain, suffering, any of that. It only likes to go towards pleasure, right? That's the external brain. So you start to move away from what you view is dangerous. And of course, you start to breathe faster, your heart rate increases and your blood pressure because it's preparing you to do something to get yourself to safety. Because remember, go back to the very first slide, what is your primary objective? And that's the body's survival. Okay, so what happens is you start to maybe panic. You might start to have some disassociation when you're in that danger zone because not everything is so clear to you right at that moment. Now, when you have your real life threat, that's called the dorsal dive, or they call it the dorsal vagal pathway. Now you're full on back into your parasympathetic nervous system, but it's in a place of, think of the possum, right? If it's under threat, it pretends it's dead. Well, it's that same thing. We do the same thing. It's when you're in such a survival state, you become immobilized. There's that hopelessness and that overwhelming feeling, and you become hypo-aroused. You can disassociate, you can collapse, you can shut down, and you can completely freeze. And that is what happens with rape survivors. A lot of times, it's like you literally could not do anything. You could not move if you wanted to, because you're in that mode. Your body took over, and you no longer had a choice in that situation. Okay. So I really like this. So then this is to remind you guys and to remind me if we want to take a quick break, let's say 5 minutes, so everybody can maybe go to the bathroom. Remember, survival. It's all about survival. Okay. All right. So let's come back in 5 minutes. So I have, let's say 2:25. How's that? Okay. Welcome back, everybody. So, trauma conscious yoga. It's really, taking from David Emerson's Overcoming Trauma with Yoga. Taking my takeaway from his work is the safe, secure, predictable environment. And that is at the root of Connected Warriors as you reduce, triggerability. And for empowered yoga, we add to that because it is a deeper injury, it's a more profound injury, and it requires a deeper introspective work. And so we add affirmations, we add gratitude, and the aspect of self-care quite a bit more significantly. So we always teach where you meet your student where they are. And the aspect is no one is broken. We are not here to fix anybody. We just know that they're deeply injured. So that's really the takeaway, to think about what is empowered yoga versus any other yoga. And I think every yoga class, I'm sure everybody here teaches, it's got that at the root of what your foundation is. But sometimes you just have to take a couple extra steps about doing something or maybe not doing something based upon who's in front of you. So a big part of the aspects of what trauma conscious yoga is in our world is bilateral stimulation. So because trauma disconnects the corpus callosum, the mohawk, we want to come back to reconnecting it, to rebuilding it, and think about, well, how do we do that? So if it's a bridge or it's a divider, however you want to look at it, and the problem is the right left hemispheres are not communicating as well as they should be, or as effectively or as efficiently, which also will affect the prefrontal cortex. And then even the brainstem, the primitive brain, where does that fit in? So if you can get that back on the bridge here and get it back in good working order, is obviously the best solution. So a literal crossing the midline, asymmetrical poses, right arm up, left arm down. Because what you're doing is you're causing your brain to have to use both sides. You have no choice. We know for sure that the left hemisphere controls right side movement. The right hemisphere controls left side movement. There's conversation now that there's been for years. They said, well, this is your emotional side. This is your artistic side. Maybe the left is your more statistical side, more of your logic, more of the precision, right? And so now they're not 100% sure that's true. And it doesn't really matter. What we know is the whole totality of the brain, we want it to work together. That's all we do know. And how can we access that, which to me, it's that bridge. The corpus callosum is the key, I believe, to an overall functioning brain. So with that, vestibular and the proprioception, that starts in the brainstem and it moves up into our limbic system. So we really want to work in doing that type of midline crossing or bilateral. And I use the breath and I use movement and where the gaze goes, because that's a big piece. So as I teach that last little bit, you'll see that. So you want to some of you probably know this, bilateral stimulation is the basis of EMDR work. So I know there's several therapists, you might be using that or you might be EMDR certified. So mindfulness in your edge. So that is the key, is the edge. If we stay in our normal habitual patterning, even if it's an unhealthy one, nothing's going to change. We know that for sure. But how do you go to the edge without going over the waterfall? Or how do you even know where your edge is? And that's the key. And the way you know is by increasing your internal sensitivity, your internal awareness, your ability to interpret what your body's telling you. Because remember, the body knows all. The body has the information. We just don't always hear it in the context it's given. And sometimes we just flat ignore it. I have done that a lot. The brain likes new things, but it doesn't like change. If that makes crazy sense, right? It really likes new things because that's the bright, shiny object, right? We all like bright, shiny objects. That was me on Facebook. Oh, I see, I got to have one of those. Oh, I need one of those. I probably didn't need any of that. But the point is we like that, but we don't like change because we get stuck in our habitual patterning, right? Do you guys drive? Oh, well, nobody's driving to work, but if you are driving to work, do you find that you drive the same way? And where do you think accidents happen on the road? They happen within 2 miles from your home because you're on autopilot. You're not even present. Your body may be in the car, but you're not there, right? So that is the ability to be more present, to be present, to know I'm in the car and I choose to go this way instead of that way, okay? We're a bio machine, we are. And we are a closed bio machine. And in this, we need movement and we need change. Think about, we're no different than a car or a boat. Any of you guys are boat owners? Yeah, so a boat owner, they say the best 2 days are the day you buy it and the day you sell it or get rid of it or something. Well, let me tell you, we have boats and they have been sitting on my dock for a while. And the thing is, if you don't use it, they're going to sit there forever and become an artificial reef because it's got to move. The engines have to move. Engines are movable. There's actual, things that move within the engine. Different than like a Tesla car. A Tesla does not have moving parts in an engine. It doesn't have that combustible engine. It's different. You just got to plug it in and give it power and it goes. It's got other issues with batteries, but it doesn't have those problems. And so I'm just getting to, if you leave a car sit for a year, the tires will rot, won't they? We're made to move, so you have to keep moving. You can turn your switch on. I talked about that earlier. We don't have an auto switch, so you can turn your switch on either from the top down or from the bottom up. I'm a bottom up girl, I gotta tell you, because that is when you recalibrate through your autonomic nervous system with breath, movement, or touch. It's really that somatic. For me, it's a practice. I'm an Ashtangi, so for me, when I practice the primary, I'm not thinking I am truly on autopilot, but the benefits are all there because I practice with that mindfulness manner. Meditation, on the other side, is kind of a top-down approach, which works too. It's just different. So that's where your focus is on something, and what you're doing is you're shifting yourself to your parasympathetic because you're allowing yourself to just focus on one thing, whatever that one thing is. And you can imagine somebody who has CPTSD or complex trauma, for them to sit in silence, where do you think they're going? Because we go to the trauma groove. We go to that place of comfort. And that is, for trauma survivors, that is their place of comfort. So you want to be careful about the meditations that you teach into trauma survivor groups because of that aspect. Okay. Come back to my theory of vacation from your vacation. So when you go somewhere new, it seems like it takes forever, right? I even see billboards. Mom, when are we there? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? We are not there yet. But yet when you go home, you got there in 5 minutes. You go, how come it didn't take so long? It took the exact same time. It's our perception of time. Because our mind, when it's got all this new stuff in front of us, because it likes new stuff, it's really excited and it's involved, but yet time will slow down. There's several veterans on this call. And so there is that aspect that you all know in combat where it's moving in slow motion. You are so aware of everything. That's your sympathetic nervous system keeping you safe in that environment. And then you come back to your habitual patterning of the ability to protect yourself, protect your unit, everything you need to do, and you always have a mission. So because you're so mission oriented, everything else kind of falls by the wayside except what you need to be observing, and it slows down in time. That's our ability to keep ourselves safe. And we want to be able to come back to that and forth. That's the resiliency piece. So being present is the physical aspect. It is not an esoteric. It's not metaphysical. It is really, really physical. It's why we started with the grounding meditation, because this is a physical aspect. It's a physical injury. It is a mental injury, and it's a psyche injury, and possibly even a spiritual injury for MST. So in order for us to come back to the body, to create a safe place where you want your mind, body, your body, mind to be that safe zone instead of the war zone, is get yourself grounded. And then how do you know that you're grounded? Well, you have to know where your body parts are in space, literally. And the best way is to touch something. It gives you a tactile. Remember, we're all made of sensors, and we're geared to receive that information coming in. So you can, as a teacher, you provide opportunities for your students to understand they are in this present moment, whatever that present moment is. That it's not something behind them and it's not something in front of them, it's just right now. One way is strictly cue an inhale and an exhale. If you're consciously breathing, you are only in the inhale and you're only in the exhale. Invite them to notice the physical space around them. Notice the needs of their body when they transition into or out of a posture, a pose. Providing choices are always the way for a trauma survivor, because that is the big piece, as you saw in the trauma groove. That's one of the elements of the trauma groove of building it, is lack of choice. So rhythms, creating rhythms. Trauma, as we know, disrupts all of our biorhythms. And it's important because our rhythms are us. It's really, think about it. When you get so quiet, you can feel your heartbeat. You can almost feel your body breathe. You can almost feel blood pressure. And when you get really quiet and really deep, you can feel your organs. So in that sense, rhythm is a big part of that. In order to feel your rhythm, so you can stay in that place that's really healthy for you. As I have practiced yoga for so many years, my frequency is so high, I have to be super, super careful around too much electronics, too much of equipment that puts out energy, like biorhythms. I cannot go to a building that has a biorhythm machine that tests biorhythms. My sister had cancer. She was going to an acupuncturist to get treatment. I literally had to not only leave the room, I had to leave the building until I felt my body stopped vibrating. We also know the flip side of that is if we meditate in collective groups, they did studies a while ago, how that decreases crime in that group, in that community. Because your frequency can change the frequencies around you. And that's how we know that we're attracted to other people, or we have this effect of, oh, no, that's too much for me, or that doesn't work for me, right? So just being aware of that, the rhythms are a big piece of it. So when you're teaching, think of the rhythm of your class. Think about what is that? And how does your students show up when you start? Meet them where they are, but maybe they're really hyper aroused that day and you want to start there. So maybe you start seated and then you allow them, as they settle into that and get grounded themselves, you can change that rhythm for them and help them move there. And once they can start feeling that time and again, that's when they know they've got a tool that they can use. So synchronization of breath and movement, I am really a pain in the ass about that for my teacher training, when I do teacher training, because it really is about that. You've got multiple aspects going on. Imagine you can just do that sitting where you are, laying down, or whatever you're doing, standing. Take your arms by your sides. Begin an inhale when the arms start to move, and the end goal of the palms to reach or maybe touch up above. But whatever the end goal of your arms, wherever you know your arms will go maximally up and together, do that. So focus on the synchronization of that breath and movement. Inhaling, and finish the inhale at the very moment the palms touch and you look up. Now the reverse is exhale. As you carry the arms down, can you bring them down where they started and finish the exhale at that moment they arrive where they started? Okay, so everybody do that. Work in that space. Just work in that space of feeling, can I do that? Can I start a movement, whatever the movement is, know what the end is, as they touch, be there with that. And then move back into the exhale and see if you can feel the same moment. Okay, I see that there's some stuff in there. Yeah. Right. No audio? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
We lost
Okay.
you for a second when you were.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I've got my thing on my laptop and I'm pushing buttons inadvertently. All right, so I see. Yeah, okay. So there's a question. Sylvia asked, enteric is, yes, digestion. What happens when someone is addicted to hyperarousal? Yep. Yeah, okay, so I'll address that one right now. So yes, and I'll give you the example. For those of you who were in the military or veterans, you guys know this. So when you're in a situation where you are hyper aroused all the time, or you're hyper vigilant, let's call it that way, maybe even, you have to have so much more when you come back here to even get you to the place of feeling. Because you don't anymore. You are so immune to that new level. It requires so much more to even get you to feel again, to get you to notice, because this is what we see. Our younger veterans that come back fully bodied, they're doing extreme sports. Well, why? Because they need that rush of adrenaline. If you can imagine, and that's back to the chemistry set. So if your level, if this is your level place here when you're born, and life changes that, and you might be a little bit more or less, but whatever that is, it is. And now you get put into a situation where you're really in a vigilant state longer and longer. You start to see how the chemistry changes, and now your balance is here. And so now you come back from deployment, all right, and you're expecting to come back to where you were, but sadly, that's not the way that works. It takes time to get your chemistry levels back, because why? Survival. The body thinks, because you live this way for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, this way, the body's going, I am here. This is my normal. This thing, not normal. This normal. So how do you move them back to kind of a homeostasis where they're kind of in a healthier balance? It takes time. And that is the one grain of sand at a time, because you certainly can't do this overnight. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It needs to be a slow progression that the body is like, you're kind of tricking the body into, oh, okay, I'm here now. Oh, okay, I'm here now. Okay, I'm here now. Okay, fine, I'm here. Do you think addicts don't want to stop? They know what they're doing is harmful. They know this. Their body's going, dude, I'm here and I need to go here and I'm going to be here. And I don't care what you say to me, I am here. That's our samskars, right? That's our patterns, and we do this. So that's what happens in childhood, because in childhood, imagine that your foundation is here. You haven't developed, your whole systems are not developing in the most beneficial way for you. They're not capable of developing in the most beneficial way. Well, there's something that there's a lot of things you could probably do to help that, but there's this one organization out west in Encinitas that is the best thing I have found, Brain Highways. And that's what their whole repertoire is kind of like retraining the brain in body-centric manners. And it's brilliant. I've seen so much work, and we're going to be working with them once we get out of COVID. So, okay, the next question, Tanya, in early OT rhythms. Yes, use music with a rhythm, 50 to 7 BPM. I love that. So for me, you know what I do? I don't do that specifically, but what I do when I put music together because I come with a dance background, so everything had the beat. What I do is I'll say to myself as the song is playing, I'll say inhale and exhale. And if the beat is correct to that, I'm good to go. That's how I've done it. I just knew that would work for me. And I also listen to every bloody word on the song because it has to be positive, because the negative is bad. So, okay, so I think anything else? Okay, so that's all the chat. Thank you guys for using that. Okay, all right, so we talked about the synchronization of breath and movement, different rhythms. So the key is you want to not just have the same monotone, right? We don't ever want monotone. And I mean not your voice, I mean monotone in the rhythm. There wants to be a little bit of change. And in teacher training, I talk about the peak pose, right? You build up to a peak pose and then you come back down. So it's that same kind of concept. What we talk about with Connect to Warriors classes is that the beginning and the end of the class are virtually the same for most every teacher, wherever you're teaching. And it's the center, it's the meat of the class, or it's the sandwich filling that is uniquely individual to the teacher and to the potential population that they're teaching with. And so that provides our students a lot of variety that they can choose to go, and they're going to feel like it's the same basic premise of trauma conscious. So having different rhythms is really great. So whether you do it within your class, whether you do it by offering different classes, maybe a couple times a week, however that works for you, think about that. Also, the aspect of the rhythms of just the length in a pose. How long do you stay? Some may be more. With this practice, it's the repetitive that's really important. And I'm a believer of 3 times. I think the brain, when it's given something new, it goes, I'm not sure what you want me to do. And the second time it goes, oh, okay, that was familiar. And the third time it's like, oh yeah, I got that, right? But if you keep adding to that, you might be doing it in a way that may not be great for you, but even though the brain got it, it may not be great. So if you keep doing it, now you've just created this neural pathway of this manner of doing it. So I like doing 3 times, step back, and then go again. So in this class of an empowered yoga class, I would offer, do a posture that you think is good for the rhythm piece, for the synchronization piece. You want to repeat it 3 times and then step away and move on to something else. You may want to come back to it, but in that class. So you kind of have to play with that, and that's up to you guys. So you also want to provide an opportunity for the students to experience a distress tolerance. And what that means is a new posture could be enough distress tolerance that you offer. It's like, oh, okay. And it's the ability to stay in a place that's new and be okay. That's where you want them to get. You don't ever want to take your students to that place that's new and so out of the box that they just lose it, because that could trigger them. You want to be able to walk them into a place where it's new, and then allow them to have the opportunity to choose to stay there. So language around, and if you would like, stay here 3 more breaths. Otherwise, move back to X, whatever that might be. Always options, choices. And that is really the key of the edge too, right? How do you find that edge? Where's that waterfall? Well, I got to keep touching it, step a little closer, and then maybe step back and be okay with that. All right, so healing in community. So the best thing I found, and I'll just give you a little bit, is community is, I think trauma conscious yoga, I think yoga generally is one of the best modalities out there to incorporate the body mind. I think it is so powerful. It can do amazing help, and it can also harm. So you have to be aware of that. One of my teachers long time ago say, you know, this practice is a sharp knife. It can cut you or it can shave you, right? So you want to be able to feel that shave to change, but not the cut. And so when I started Connect to Warriors with Ralph, we really had no money, and then we got a few dollars, and everybody was coming in their branch of service shirts. So you had your Army guys, your Navy guys, you had your Marines, and then there would be the one lone Air Force guy or gal, and then maybe a Coastie every now and again would go. And it was like high school. Each branch of service would talk to each other, but they would not, would talk to amongst themselves, but nobody would talk to each other, except for the Navy and the Marines would throw blocks at one another. That was pretty much it. So the day I got the shirts, I brought them to class, mid-class. I'm like, hey, I got something new. I passed the shirts out. Everybody immediately took their branch of service shirt on. They put a Connect to Warrior shirt on. And not only that, they started to talk to one another. And that was where I saw the power of community. More important almost than the yoga. And that's why this is so important. When you go to teach an MST class, it is critical that the only players in the room are there who are MST survivors and the facilitators, because this is their tribe and they need this community to heal. The beautiful thing is, as they heal, they'll start to venture out and want to go to other classes. They may still come back, but they will start to venture out. And creating this safe, secure, predictable environment where they know they are 100% absolutely safe is critical for their health and their healing process. So affirmations around this community piece: safety, to be safe. Boundaries: I have the right to personal space. Strength: I am strong. Assertiveness: I have the right to stand up for myself and others. Power: I am powerful. Intuition: I am smart and wise. Trust: I trust myself. Community: I am not alone. For those who know me as a yoga teacher, I am not the happy crap gal. I am not that teacher. I'm just not. But I study it and I believe in it. This is a class this is all about the happy crap in a good way, in a way that you're providing them tools that they can take away for their own self-care. You're not providing spirituality, if that makes sense, because the goal of I believe all yoga classes is to provide the student with a blank slate. I want to provide my students with literally this. I want them to have this, so that when they are in their minds and their bodies, they can feel and create what works for them. As they start to heal, they start to be curious and more curious, and they start to ask questions. And now they're going to write their own path and their own journey. Not me. I'm not telling them what they're doing. Okay. All right. So 8 limbs of yoga, the practice on and off the mat. There have been a lot of studies that there is actual cognitive benefits of having the conversation around the yamas and the niyamas. And we know that just related to the military specifically, yamas and niyamas have everything to do with standards of conduct, right? Just like in the military. They are the yoga world's 10 commandments, so to speak. Asana is physical training, as you can see that. So you can have all of these conversations. So I want you to think about this related to incorporating yamas and niyamas in your class, because it will promote more efficient brain function, neuroplasticity, your healthy chemicals, pro-social behavior by using guided meditation, visualization, or mantra. I just encourage you and I caution you to stay with the body, mind, rather than esoteric, rather than metaphysical, because what you don't know is where their trauma came from. And even if you may know where one is, you don't know what a prior one came from. So you don't know what you might trigger. So suggested affirmations, if you think about ahimsa, you could say something like, I choose to act, and provide this to them, I choose to act with kindness towards myself and all creatures. Asteya, I honor and respect mine and others' boundaries. Go niyamas. Saucha, I choose to clear and cleanse my inner landscape. Tapas, I am honored to sacrifice for the greater good. So you come up with your own. These are just examples, and they're in your book, and they'll also be in the PowerPoint. But come up with what speaks to you. Choose one for a class. I would not recommend doing multiple ones because I don't retain when I go to classes and a teacher's giving me 4 or 5 different things to think about. I've lost the first 3 and the only one I kept is the last one. And sometimes those first 3 were really brilliant and I'm like, oh, so think about that. Know what your intention is for that class and the message you want to leave and be very clear to be there. Okay. So energetic and conscious being. So we all know, or you may know, our koshas, our layers. This is who we are. So this is the Russian nesting doll. And I'm actually working to create some that we can personalize somehow. And we start at the physical layer because that's us. We are the bio machine. And the only way we can touch the inside is to come from the outside. You know, it's really, I don't think it's realistic to think you can go right down into the inside from just going down into the inside, because I don't think that's true. I think that you might go there, but you're not going to find your truth. So think about all of the physical, verbal, and the energetic opportunities you can provide your students. You're increasing the awareness of each of these layers. That's it. So whatever language around you want to give it, please do that. So think about the Manamaya Kosha. That is your Manas mind. Your Vinya Maya Kosha is your Amkara mind. And your Ananda Maya Kosha is your Buddhi mind. So we want to all get there for sure, but you got to take your time to get there. So now who's driving the bus? Because some days I have 45 people in my bus and they all want to tell me where to go, literally. And there are other days there's just me. And then I might have a conversation with 2 or 3 of them on the bus because somebody else joined. This is everything to do with figuring out who you are and coming into that place and understanding when you have a decision to make, who's making the decision. Because it's easy to go to the outer layer, the Manas mind. That's the easy one. That's the one that really, it's just like, okay, yeah, it's just a regular day. Just a regular day. I'm just going to do the same thing I always did because that always worked for me. And you don't even have to really think about it, you know, and then your ego, that is where the bright, shiny things are all at because it wants something new. It's got to feed the ego. I think of it as feeding the ego. Well, I can feed the ego in lots of ways, but maybe that's that one for you. And then that booty mind is the one that knows it's your gut instinct. And how often have you made a decision that went against your gut and did it go wrong? Because I can tell you for me, every single time it went wrong. And I always talked my way into that other decision. It's like, really? Okay, there it is again. So just think about that. And you want to offer opportunities for your students to start to feel this. And this one's hard to teach in a class, is movement, but I'm sure you guys can touch that a little bit. All right, so habitual patterns, samskaras. You know, how many habits have you tried to break? How many times have you tried to make a big change in your life? And did that really work? And did it stay? And was it sustainable? So, you know, your habitual pattern means a settled or behavior, settled, regular, and addictive tendency, right? It's one that is hard to give up. So samskaras are defined as ingrained patterns of behavior or subliminal impressions or habitual patterns of behavior. So the only way I know to make a sustainable change is self-awareness. Because you have to access the different layers of your mind because you need to understand who's making the decision. Okay. So using your self-awareness will connect you to the cells of your body mind. And once the transformation occurs, that's your new neural pathway. And that's the new way of going. That's what it knows to do now. And you can change that. And I don't know if I said it, but trauma is held in the cells of our body. So imagine it's kind of like it's almost, the body's kind of fighting you in a certain way because the trauma is there. But that's the energy follows thought concept, is you can change that. You absolutely can. So yoga sadhana. So yoga sadhana is more than just, I went to a class today. Yoga sadhana means that you have a practice that is developing a healthy mind, a pranic body, and the self-awareness or your consciousness. That is really what yoga sadhana is. And yoga abhyasa, that is the treadmill. That's, I went to a class today. Oh, I'm going to go to this class. Oh, I'm going to go to Philip's class. Oh, I heard about this other class. And you go from class to class to class. And there is yet to be substantive depth that sits underneath that. There's yet to be a foundation that sits underneath that you can build upon true change. So I think of the Atma Shakti, the soul, that's your SIM card, just like your phone. You can buy a new phone. You can put apps on your phone. That's your personality, right? But the SIM card, your soul is yours. No one else has that SIM card. No one. You may even have multiple SIM cards. There are people who probably have multiple SIM cards because they have a different phone for different aspects of their life. You may have that too. But the SIM card that's the true you, there's only that one of you. And in order to create permanent change, true change for that SIM card, it takes a lot of work. Okay. And it's not easy. And our brains tend to move away from not easy and move to easy just because path of least resistance. Trauma conscious yoga. So this is specifically for MST. This is basically everything I've always said. Changes relationship, it creates community, minimizes trigger, meets you where you are, and it's a safe, secure, predictable environment. Yoga is something I use now, is your own growth and awareness. If you have somebody in the military, specifically the military or first responders, or any of those people who say, that's not for me, because whatever they say, yoga. Your own growth and awareness. That's all yoga is. Who's going to fight you on that one? Who's going to say, I don't want to grow. I don't want to be aware. No one. So changing the language is perfectly fine, because to me, that meets them where they are. That's the first definition. I just want to get them to the mat because I believe yoga will do what yoga does. I want to get out of the way. Okay. This is also the only modality where all 6 senses are stimulated without cognitive involvement. That is the key to this. Now I would say all practice of yoga, at least how I teach, is all about get out of the way, let it do its job, which means I want to minimize how much this is involved up here. All right, so teaching objectives, pretty straightforward. I would say you're creating obviously the environment and what that looks like where they're practicing. The challenges, yes, you are giving them challenges. That's the edge. So everything, challenges, boundaries, assertiveness, that's all within the edge, having them touch the edge. Curiosity, self-love, that is self-empowerment for them. That is the empowerment part. Mindfulness, self-care, the empowerment part. Tolerance of sensations, trust and acceptance, that is part of the edge. Physical, verbal, and energetic opportunities, that is what's happening. That is your job to give them all of those other pieces in the challenges, curiosity, tolerance, and mindfulness. That is up to you. Your choice of sequence, your choice of language, the affirmations that you provide them, all of that is in your control. So your resilience, not your resilience, their resilience. So resilience, mental resilience is the ability to connect and sustain focus and concentration when faced with difficult situation or challenge. So imagine that is, for some, it's actually going to be just coming to that class. That is enough. That's all they need. Others, it might need a little bit more. Some will be a particular posture. Some will be thinking about a particular posture. The emotional resilience is the ability to sense the state of being and to change the direction to support the current moment. That's the being present is physical. You really get that from the aspect of the emotions tied around being present in this moment. There's a lot of emotion pieces to that. The social resilience is the ability to connect to you and others for support, to be supported, to feel compassion and empathy that is either inside your particular family, your community, your tribes, however that is. And there's a lot of pieces to that. We know trauma survivors isolate themselves. Their world becomes that trauma groove and only the trauma groove, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Physical resilience is the ability to recover from injury or limitation of matter and to adapt to the new normal. So all of those pieces are really important and part of your physical, verbal, and energetic opportunities. Now, the next piece is the somatic stimulation, same thing. So sequencing, that is the movement of energetic tension from core to the extremities. So I teach where after doing a couple of postures, I have them shake it out literally because I need them to. They have now taken and they have created a certain amount of tension within their body. There might be a little bit of sympathetic nervous system also going there, and this ability to let it dissipate, literally dissipate. When you wash your dog, give a dog a bath, or they go in the pool or in the water, what do they do when they get out? They shake like crazy, right? What do little kids do when they get overwhelmed, when they get stressed? They have a temper tantrum and they fling their body parts around. That's natural, that's normal. What do adults do? We're taught don't show emotion. What do men do? Definitely don't show emotion, right? Well, then you're trapping all that energy inside. Remember, we're a closed unit. You can't have all that energy built up inside. It will pop out. Grounding is literally touching the ground. The closer to the ground, the physical ground that your entire body mind is, the more grounded you feel. So that's why sometimes it's just you need to lay down on the physical ground. And resilience itself is the capacity to manage stress, change, negative disturbances, misfortune, and yet continue to grow and develop. So that's the piece where I want to read you post-traumatic growth. So that is something that we really promote. So post-traumatic growth, this is our definition, is transformative beyond the baseline or recovery from a traumatic event. Long-term changes beyond the initial resiliency after a traumatic event. PTG focuses in these three main domains: relationships with others, sense of self, and philosophy of life. PTG is the process and ultimately the outcome, combining cognitive, emotional, physical, spiritual, and social processes. Okay. We provide this pathway via our evidence-based trauma conscious yoga protocol for over 10 years with over 170,000 visits and 0 reported suicide. So for us, we know this works. So your environment, this will be the physical space you teach this. So a lot of this is not applicable right now unless you are actually teaching in a physical space. Otherwise, this is Zoom. We have one empowered yoga class being taught a week on Wednesdays at 12. And it is on Zoom. And it's done in a way that the screens are off for the participants, so we don't see them. So they have anonymity as well as privacy. Okay. So obviously you have your location. Be very mindful of windows, doors, the lights, and the temperature. And I think most of this sounds the same is the other. So I'll just bring you to the most important parts. So in your physical class, if you're doing a physical class, most likely it'll be at the VA hospital or a vet center. You may have one in a yoga studio in a community, but again, remember, you got to keep that safe and secure in that every participant in there knows they are in a like-minded family. So be mindful of that. There needs to be somebody at the door physically guarding it so that the students feel safe and secure. That is critical. If they feel anybody can just walk in that door, if they know that there is no guard there, they will be constantly worried. The other piece is you're working in a, and I may be moving forward, but you're teaching this class in a circle rather than in rows. Everybody's the same. We're all in this together. If you have a clinician with you, if you have an assistant, preferably you are opposite of each other in the circle so that all of the students feel they're equally contained in this safe space. All right. Caution with props. Mats are fine. Props. Straps could be a concern. Very much a concern. I would not necessarily leave straps out. I would offer them to bring a towel, bring a bandana, right? Offer them a different solution to a yoga strap. Okay. Candles, no incense, you know, all that, because it could be triggering for our younger veterans. Yeah, okay. So music, you know, I think you guys know your trauma tribe will inform what music you use. Just make sure that it keeps them out of their groove. All right. And then the seat of the teacher, you're sitting down or you're standing, you're not walking around. And if you are having to move, talk about it. I'm going to go adjust the temperature. I'm going to turn the temperature up or down, whatever it is, be clear what you're doing. And of course, avoid singling students out and drawing any attention to anybody for anything, unless you see that there could be an injury and it's imminent. Otherwise, use your language, use your words around that. So verbal guidelines. So just be aware how words land on students. I hope that you have the ability and the experience to observe that. I know immediately when I say something when I'm in class that did not land well. I mean, I know. Sometimes I know, and so you have to have your own space between your thoughts to be able to project a word out, and you have to be 5 paces ahead. So I think of this as playing chess, right? You've got to be 5 moves ahead of yourself because you have to know what's coming up. At the same time, you're using language here to take care of what's happening here, and you have to be able to know what's going to come out of your mouth next. So there's a lot going on, and even more so teaching this kind of a class. No negative words. Keep them in the positive. Negative words have a negative vibration and a negative connotation. So stay away from that. Specifically, be careful about certain body parts that you're not using. So you're not, I say in my regular class, you're tushy. I would never say that in an MST class. Never, never, never. And I would say, and your sternum between your breasts. I would never say that. I would just say the center of your chest, maybe. And I may not even say that. I may say, lift your heart up. That I might say. So think about that. What would be potentially triggering? The word posture and the word pose. We're using form or shape because in some instances they were posed or they were put into a posture. So just being aware of that. The other feedback I've gotten and I've read was the words that I would think would be not on this list are the words trust, love, and safe. And this, oh shoot, I apologize, guys. Here we go. Like, what is she talking about? All right, is to trust, love, and safe. Remember, especially for those who might have some childhood stuff, they were told that they are to be trusted, they are safe, and they are loved. So imagine what that might have for them. Okay, so being mindful in there. Don't use the word find, especially for our veterans, because in the younger ones, they were actually finding body parts. So you want to just be very aware. And your physical guidelines, 0 touch, no physical touch, no physical touch. David Emerson and I were on a podcast together a while ago, and you know, we have completely 2 different perspectives in that he works with significantly traumatized individuals, and there is never a touch, ever, ever, ever. It's not even on the radar. But I do believe that there is nothing more powerful than the human touch. However, it has to be invited and it has to be accepted, and it's not in this class. So there may be, and I can't think of what it would be, a scenario, but there could possibly be a crazy scenario where you might have to touch somebody, and it might be because it's somebody who might have physical limitations. Whatever that is, make sure you have approval beforehand and just be mindful about that. My theory is, as a yoga teacher, if you cannot articulate the entire modification and assist with your words, you have no business touching them. Because otherwise you're just experimenting, okay? So just be mindful about that, okay? Trigger management. Okay, so trauma triggers is a stimulus that prompts a recall of a previous traumatic experience. You don't know what it is. They may not know what it is. So what we have is we have a proactive protocol. So we would love to do this in a 6 to 10 week program. So there's a beginning and an end, and it's a very small group, 6 to 8 people, and it's not co-ed. The participants have to be under a mental health clinician care before starting. That seems to be the most critical piece, is that to make sure that your students have the proper mental health care, because this will inherently bring stuff up. Now, your goal when you go to the edge, when you take your students to the edge, your goal is trigger anything. Your goal is not to heal them. Your goal is not to let things come back up. Oh, Kim, you're funny. We're working on it, Kim, because we have a new graphics. Kim wanted to know when our tank tops are back. So your goal is to bring, so if the edge is here and they're here, your goal is to maybe step here. Stay so far away from this, because remember who we're talking with. We're talking to military members who are already going to push themselves, who already are that person who says, if this is the goal, I'm here, right? Yeah, no, yeah. So keep them here and just be mindful of that. All right, so bring them back to the present moment. That is your key if they get triggered. Using language to get them grounded again. Because all that happened is they got hijacked. Bring them back to the moment where they know that this is the present moment. They have to understand that. There's certain styles of yoga, pranayama, meditation that are no-no in our world. And, you know, we can, I think you have that in the regular CW training, so I don't have to go into it. But in this case, be careful of your asana selection, and we'll talk about that in a moment, how long you're there, the temperature of the room, and the intensity of your rhythm. Be very mindful of that. Do not touch the student, especially if they have a flashback and you can feel and you can see it in meditation. Talk with them rather than trying to touch them. Okay. And you are the leader, so make sure you have strong command presence, and especially with this, but you're tempering your command presence with nurturing. So you're bringing out your most self-nurturing self to your students. And the goal is not to get them to do more. The goal is get them to listen to their bodies, listen to their bodies. That's your goal. Okay, but you got to be authentic about the nurturing. So my nurturing may not be really suited for this class, and that's why I'm not teaching this class on a long-term basis. I'm probably really not teaching it, but I at least know who I am, so I'll keep my students safe by staying away from them. So teacher and class boundaries. All right, you are the facilitator. You hold the energy of the class. Your job is to be calm, confident, authentic. These are military members. They can suss out an imposter in 5 seconds, probably less than that. And you need to be authentic. They will know if you're BSing them, okay? So they are, yeah, they just know. They have 6, 7 senses. They already knew that before you even thought about it. Boundaries are super important. You have to maintain energetic, physical, and mostly your professional boundaries. You are the teacher, they are the student. You are working to stay connected, empathetic, compassionate, but you're not involved with them on a personal basis. If you do, you can't really be the teacher anymore. This is very much ethics. Okay, so be really, really mindful, especially if you start to feel a little bit of that transference effect. It's all them. They're doing all the work. You're just a guide. You're a facilitator. Trauma, stewardship, and self-care. Teach your students self-care. Teach them that. And remember your vicarious trauma. You're taking on traumas every day working in this population. And you have to make sure whatever your self-care is priority. Please, please prioritize that. Okay. Again, survival. The bio machine only wants to survive. That's it. It could care less about anything else. It could care less about what you think. You're the SIM card. That's all you are, is a SIM card. The body will take care of its own survival. Listen to it time and again. Asana content. Okay. So what are you going to put in this class? And there's some sequences here. I don't have them there. I got to find them. So yeah. So there's you got to put stuff in the class, right? So you have to decide, what are you doing? Your focus is to stabilize the core, grounding, asymmetrical, bilateral, integrate the extremities into the core. You know, whatever that is, that's your focus. You start there. Now the sequence, this is our recommendation, is a check-in. And we'll do this first part and we'll do the last part. And in that check-in, you're going to create your affirmation or whatever your intention for the class is. That's that great opportunity. They're just checking in right now. You will decide based upon what you see in the room, are you going to start your class after the check-in with standing or seated? That's your choice. The intention, conscious breathing, whether you want to talk about a yama and niyama, you'll decide that, whatever that is. And then you will give them opportunities for gratitude, trust, acceptance, and self-love. The way I like to teach is I don't talk about any of that. I just do it. And the way they don't even know that that's what happened, because then they don't have to get involved in their head. You remember, you want to keep them out of their head as much as you can. Keep them in their physical body. Movement and mobility. Move the spine and hips in 6 directions every day. That's what you want to tell them. So when you talk about doing a form or a shape, that is what you're going to say. And yes, like this is one of the 6 directions or whatever it is that your words are. How you're synchronizing breath and movement, how you're transitioning, and do you have opportunities for shaking it out? Because that's super important. They've got to reset. That's like the Etch-a-Sketch. In my regular flow class, I use a vinyasa. That's my Etch-a-Sketch moment. I drew this picture. Now I need to shake it out. You will repeat. There's your repeat. I would say no more than 3 times, however that works for you. And then you might want to add your modified sun salutation. Okay. And you'll figure out from there your opening and your closing, however that works for you. Okay. All right. So from there, pranayama, we're just going to talk real quick. So this just, you guys, I'm not going to educate you on pranayama because you know it, but I would say Control Alt Delete is a reset for your computer. Well, that's what conscious breathing is for your system, for your nervous system. It is your reset button. It is literally Control Alt Delete for us. Okay. And remember, 80 to 90% of the world's population does not breathe correctly. So let's just start there and go from there. So emotions and breath, I gave you guys this because I just think it's so valuable to see where you are in things and where you are with your breath and how does that feel. And it's just a good visual. Alternate nostril breathing, we end our classes with this, and you're doing it after you've had a symmetrical posture. So your very last pose has to be symmetrical rather than asymmetrical twists, which I've never understood. And you want to start and stop on your left side, which is your traditional for keeping them in their parasympathetic. But if you're working in a class where you're feeling they're too hypo-aroused, then you might want to start and stop on the right side, which will put them in their sympathetic nervous system. Okay. Pranayama practice. The 2 breathing methods we also promote for this is your vagal brake breathing, which is your immediate PNS or your parasympathetic activation. Think about you're driving down a hill and you're breathing at a certain rate, right? And all of a sudden you want to put on the brake and you slow way down, and that's the exhale. Really slow way down, which will increase the length of the exhale. So it automatically puts them there. Whereas your interoceptive breathing, which is literally brain changing, that's where you guide them to how the breath is feeling throughout the respiratory system. Okay, I will do that with you today. And then your meditation practices. We know that meditation increases gray matter in the medial prefrontal cortex, and it decreases amygdala stimulation, which is too much hyperarousal in the emotional center. So I can never say this. Oh, wait, here, let me click this. I can never say this properly, so I hope you guys bear with me. Ho'oponopono. Yeah, so it's the Hawaiian meditation about love, trust, gratitude, right? So it's that. It changed my world when this was brought to me. I guess maybe 10 years ago now. It literally changed my world. So that's the one we really recommend because for this class, because it covers all the bases, and how your word choice is entirely up to you. And then facilitating, how do you facilitate a class? Well, the first important part is you set up the room, right? That's key. You got to set up the room and all of those parts. You are giving physical, energetic opportunities because the edge is where they're going, and you're creating the rhythms. So everything that you need to know, we talked about that's in there. So let's do, and then just thank you. So I'm done with this thing. Let me stop the share. Yay. Okay, there I see your faces now. Oh, that's so wonderful. Okay. Time frame for these classes. An hour? Is that what you're asking? They're an hour long. Actually, that's not true. Margaret's starting them at 45 minutes. An hour could be too long. So we want to err on the side of caution always. So it may be, you might feel more comfortable 45 minutes. The issue, okay, yeah, Beth, I'll answer your question in a sec. So the issue is in the VA and the vet center, it's about moving furniture for those who teach there. You usually have to move furniture out and then get a class started, and then you got to move the furniture back in. So that can cause a bit of stress for everybody. So that's why maybe a 45-minute class would be more suited for that. So Beth asked about, does alternate nostril breathing create anxiety in some way? Can create anxiety, right? Is that your question? Yeah, alternate. Okay, so I've offered alternate nostril breathing without your hands and just a visualization of that. If you feel that you see that, because you can see, you're watching your students, you can see that, yeah, that may not be serving. You can just start trying it out without your hands. Visualize you're inhaling through the left nostril and you're exhaling out of the right? You can do that, because yes, this could be very much so. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, no? No?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. The first time I did that Hawaiian meditation, I can't remember the name of it. But the first time I did that, I actually had quite a challenging experience because I do have a trauma history in addition to working with trauma. And I had actually had a dream about my situation the night prior. And so doing that meditation was actually kind of triggering for me because I was seeing the person who had harmed me. And, saying like, I love you, I forgive you was actually very difficult for me. I had to like move out of that for that portion of it. So just as like general.
No, thank you very much. So let me put that in context. This is only about them. The true hope, whatever. I've got to get that right someday. But the true meditation is about you first, then a loved one, then somebody who might need support, and then that person you might have a tricky relationship with or a problem or whatever words you want to put around that, right? It's just about you. It's just about them. You want them to do this only about them, right? Mm-hmm. So that would take that piece out about another. So when you teach it, it's only about, this is just you. if they want to look it up further and go further, I always, you know, if you're interested, you can always, you know, go on Google and blah, blah, blah. So thank you. Thank you for that, Christine. I missed that piece. Anybody else? Questions, comments? No? Okay. All right. Well, then let's do a little class. How's that? All right. So in your manual, you saw these pages. Yeah. Okay. So one says standing and one says seated.
Was this emailed or was it with the PowerPoint?
No, this is in the manual. Did you guys not get these?
I have a
I didn't
PowerPoint.
get manuals, only the PowerPoints.
The manual was included in the initial confirmation email. I could send everyone that link again, and then the PowerPoint was sent this morning.
Oh, yeah. Could you do that, please? I thought there were no handouts.
Yeah, no, yes. I guess I asked that at the beginning, but I wasn't clear that
There's
this is
several links in the email, so you had to keep reading to find the manual.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, cool. We'll make that a little more prominent next time so you see that. So, but you have it, it's in the PowerPoint, it's not in the PowerPoint. Yeah, crap. All right, let's see. Hold on, let me share my screen. Because I want you to see this. Let me first find it and then I can share my screen. All right, can you see that? Everybody see that? So that's, no, it didn't share.
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, you do? Okay, all right.
Yes.
Hit the button again to blow it up to make it a bigger picture. So
Which button? should I-
one that's like the little computer, just at the very bottom, there's a way that you can make that.
Well, let me do this. This is on Word.
Oh, okay.
How's that? There we
That's
go.
better. Yeah. Thank
Oh,
you.
much bigger. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is the. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is the standing. So if you are looking at to start standing, this part up here is all your check-in. This would be your first part of the standing sequence. And I'll scroll down. Try not to get dizzy. So this is if you were starting seated. So you do the first part of the check-in here, and then you sit down and go here. Okay. So that's the difference. So today we'll do the standing because everybody thinks been sitting for a while. How's that? Okay. All right. So bring yourself to a standing place. And I don't know why this isn't showing up over there. Okay. And I am going to switch my camera. Well, theoretically, I'm going to switch my camera. Anyways. Do that. Okay, there we right, so everybody's standing and keep your feet hip width apart. That way it's just easier for balance. Your ankles are below your hips. Your arms are loosely down by your sides. And you can keep your eyes open or closed. It's entirely up to you. And just begin to notice a little bit of a twist to the right. Let your arms move freely and maybe exhale to the left. Think about inhaling to the right, letting your arms move, and exhaling to the left. So it's called willow or any other name you would like for the shape, as you're just allowing your body to move a little side to side. Now, when you're doing this, feel your feet. Notice that if you press down into your feet, you have maybe a little more control through the twisting of the right and the left. As you press down into your feet, lifting up through the crown of the head, allowing your shoulders to settle down. Good. And in this space, begin to notice the conscious breath. The fact that you are inhaling and you're exhaling. Good. And take 3 more breaths, allowing your movement at your own pace. Whatever that is perfect. Good. And maybe you have 1 more breath. Maybe you are done. And if you are done, move yourself back to the center into the shape of mountain. So lengthening through the crown of your head as it goes up and your feet press down. Reaching down with your fingertips and noticing the breath here. Notice stability as if you are that mountain. Great. And bringing your hands maybe to your chest if that feels good for you. You can keep your eyes open or closed. And as you set your intention today, think of you will be kind to yourself as you listen to your body, and you will allow yourself this opportunity to be kind to yourself. And take 1 more breath here, just awareness. As you keep that thought of being kind to yourself as you listen to your body. And gently let the arms go. Shake that out, release your arms, release your legs. And then bring yourself right back into mountain pose. Feet are hip distance apart if that feels right for you. Arms are by your side, standing tall. Bend your knees just a little bit and push down into your feet as you straighten your legs. Good. And do that again. Bend your knees, press into your feet, feel the ground underneath you, and stand tall. Excellent. 1 more time. As you bend the knees, inhale to stand up, pushing into your feet. Palms face forward. Inhale, reach your arms out wide and up. At the top end, you can go ahead and clasp your hands together. Push the heels of the hands up to the ceiling. And now lift everything way up to the ceiling. 1 more time, bend your knees. Inhale, straighten the legs, and exhale to the right, a lateral bend. Breathing here. Inhaling and exhaling. Just notice. Great. Consider 2 more breaths as you inhale. Reach away from your heart as you exhale. Remember to feel your feet underneath you as you push down and reach to the right. Inhale up to center and exhale there. Inhale, reach through the palms of your hands up and exhale to the left. So now just notice the difference between your right and your left lateral bend. Inhaling and exhaling, reaching away from your heart. but pull your arms back into the shoulders. Take one more breath here if that works for you. Inhale, come all the way back up to center, and exhale, let the arms down with control. Great, shake that out, let it go. So just a little bit of a standing back bend. Imagine that your heart rolls right up to the ceiling. Keep your chin tucked a little bit so you keep a neutral long neck. Inhale as you lift your heart up. Allow your hands to descend down towards the floor or support your low back, whichever is the best way for your body. As you breathe, inhale, lifting through the heart center, allow the shoulders to draw towards the mid-back. Good. One more breath, just a little bit more of an inhale and exhale. Inhale brings you back up to center and exhale, release. As you slowly bend your knees, place your forearms on your thighs and look down. Breathing here. So just notice the breath as you look forward and down. Take 2 more breaths. And 1 more. Now, if you're comfortable here and you would like to go a little bit more, you can either come down into more of a squat, or you can lower your hands down towards your shins and maybe lower your gaze down towards your feet. That's entirely up to you. Listen to your body, noticing your breath. Good. 1 more breath. Wherever you might be, place your hands on your shins or your thighs. As you straighten your arms, lift your heart. Exhale there. And inhale, stand tall. Add your arms up. Maybe the palms come together if that works for you. Looking up. And exhale, carry the arms down by your sides with control. Excellent. Shake that out. Let that go. Good, good. Okay, so now come back into seated. So get yourself nice and comfortable on the floor. And either you have choices to either sit up tall, or if you are comfortable, you can lie down. Now, this is where, if you're in a circle, I recommend that you have them turn around when they go to lie down, so their heads are in the center and their feet are onto the outside of the circle. That way they can look easily and see one another, and I think that there will be more of a safety feel for them. Okay? So in this space, sitting up nice and tall, lengthening through the crown of the head, or if you're lying and completely reclining, allow yourself to feel the ground underneath you. For those that are sitting up, just notice the lightness through your head as it lifts up tall, and that you feel supported in the ground underneath you. And take 2 more breaths here. Just awareness that you're breathing. You're inhaling and you're exhaling. Now begin to notice the breath coming in through the very tip of your nose. As you notice the inhale coming through the tip of your nose, notice the exhale moving out of your nose. Again, as you feel the inhale coming through the nose, allow the exhale as it leaves the nose. And 1 more, just like that, awareness of that breath coming in through the nose and moving out of the nose. With your next inhale, notice how the breath comes in through the nose and moves through the sinuses. And as you exhale, awareness that the breath is moving out of the sinuses and back out of the nose. Inhaling through the nose and into the sinuses, and exhaling, releasing the breath through the sinuses and through the nose. One more, just like that, feeling the breath come in through the nose, reaching the sinuses, and the exhale through the sinuses and out of the nose. As you breathe in through the nose and feel the breath move to the sinuses, feel the cheeks expand. As you release the exhale, allow the cheeks to deflate. The breath moves through the sinuses and back out through the nose. As the breath comes in through the nose and into the sinuses, allow it to inflate the cheeks. When you're ready to exhale, releasing the breath from the cheeks, the sinuses, and the nose. One more time as you inhale through the nose, the sinuses, the cheeks, and allow your exhale from the cheeks, the sinuses, and the nose. Inhaling a little further, starting at the nose, the sinuses, the cheeks. Now maybe you can feel it in the throat. As you exhale out of the throat, the cheeks, the sinuses, and the nose. Inhaling, carrying the breath a little bit deeper into the throat, through the nose, sinuses, cheeks. And exhaling from the throat, cheeks, sinuses, and nose. One more time, start to feel that effortless inhale all the way to the throat. And allow the exhale from the throat, cheeks, sinuses, and nose. Adding the lungs as you inhale through the nose, into the sinuses, cheeks, throat, and all the way down into the lungs. As you exhale, releasing the lungs, the throat, the cheeks, the sinuses, and eventually through the nose. Again, bringing the breath in through that pathway, nose, sinuses, cheeks, throat, and lungs. Allow the exhale out of the lungs, throat, cheeks, sinuses, and nose. And take one more all the way into the lungs with your inhale. Feel the pathway through the respiratory system. And then allow your exhale through that same pathway back out through the nose. And to complete the respiratory system, inhaling deeply through the nose, sinuses, cheeks, throat, lungs, and abdomen into the bottom of the diaphragm. As you exhale, softening the belly, releasing the abdomen, the lungs, throat, cheeks, sinuses, and nose. Again, inhaling all the way, opening up the entire respiratory system. Same pathway down into the deep belly. Exhaling, softening the belly and releasing the breath. Making your way through the pathway and out the nose. And one more time, completely on your own, take the breath in wherever it feels correct for you. And allow the exhale all the way back out. And as you sit or lie down, noticing how you feel, noticing the ground beneath you, and just allowing for what you feel. Continue your conscious breath of the inhale and the exhale. For those of you who are lying down, slowly bring your knees to your chest, roll to your right side, and take your time as you use your breath in your hands to come to seated. Bring your hands, everybody, to your heart center. And I thank you for taking your time and learning about empowered yoga with Connected Warriors. I appreciate all that you do for us, for those who teach for Connected Warriors, and anybody who teaches in the trauma world. Thank you so much, and namaste. So, any questions with this? Any thoughts? We still have a couple minutes. We do have classes. I'm going to change my camera here too. We do have classes in the Tucson VA. Right now, the VA is shut down. For those of you who don't know, it's pretty much shut down. You can go for real medical emergencies, but there's no mental health really services right now, the VA and vet centers. And so we have started a pilot program at the West Palm Beach VA offering classes online. And our hope is that by first of the year, we'll be rolling this out through the VA nationwide. We have an MOA with the VA to provide yoga programming for them, and we're really excited to do that. Our goal will be to, because depending upon when they reopen, which we don't know when that is now, Randy Goodman is teaching at the Leavenworth VA. It was, because they wanted it. So if any of you have your VA hospital or vet center and you're looking to start classes there, you just have to reach out and see what their situation is, because this pandemic is so uniquely localized different. It depends on where you are as to whether your VA will open or not and what their plans are. We've been told by West Palm Beach, we're looking at 2021 for in-person. Probably Florida is a hot zone, so my guess is it'll be moved. They started saying January, but I'm guessing March or April. We Connected Warriors are shut down right now to our general classes. We are working on a return to classes protocol, so we hope to have that by the end of November, which we will share with all of you. And it's up to you guys. Most of you do this as a volunteer, and we do not want to put you in any harm's way at all. I teach my class online. If you want to teach on Zoom with us, we have a Zoom account. We're more than happy to help you facilitate that. We will help you do whatever you need to get that done. So there's that piece. And the question, okay, so that's all I have. Okay. Yes, so behavioral health program, we're really excited. Our behavioral health program, oh, Beth, I love you. So we've been wanting all groups. Yeah, it's the group class, right, Christine? Yes, individually there you can go, but groups you can't. And some of our young people cannot go. We've had complaints from our veterans that there's no classes to go to, or they can't even get into their appointments. So yes, the behavioral health program is going to be in West Boca on Power Line Road between Glades and Palmetto Park. We are opening, actually, we're meeting next week. We are opening probably the end of next week. It is to veterans and who are in the system with the VA. You don't have to have a referral. You just have to be in the VA system. And we will be happy to see you for your behavioral health needs. And trauma conscious yoga is a big part of it. One of my big goals has always been to connect other veteran service organizations who do things that are similar to us, like hyperbaric, not similar, but in the same vein of adjunct therapy, hyperbaric chamber, maybe even cryotherapy, equine therapy. I'll do water therapy. I'll do CrossFit therapy. I'll do anything that makes sense that the clinician wants to prescribe to our veterans. And what the beautiful thing is we'll actually be able to pay that veteran service organization instead of them having to go out and raise money to provide the services for veterans. Oh, puppies, I see puppies. So that is really, I'm really, really excited about that. Our COO is a 20-year experience in this. He's a combat veteran. He was a combat medic. He was a fire EMT. He has 20 years experience running veteran service organizations that provide both inpatient and outpatient mental health services. So we are blessed to have him on board, and it's his vision of how we're putting this together. Our goal is to have veterans who are the clinicians as much as we can, or veterans whose family are clinicians, or veterans who have been in this, or clinicians who have been in this veteran space. We do not want to have a downtime on educating the clinicians to our demographics. So our goal is to provide the very best care for our veterans as possible in this manner. So really excited. As soon as we get about 3 months under our belt in Boca, we will open another center. It will probably be in Florida, just from a proximity standpoint. And then our big goal is to wherever we are, and we're in 26 states, is to open brick and mortar in all 26 states. As soon as we can, get this so we can turnkey it. That's our big goal. So we're looking to help as many of our 22 million veterans that exist out there. So yeah. We're here, and if you're a social worker, I know there's an MFT here, if you're anywhere in the mental health practitioner or therapist world, we want you to participate in that. And the beautiful thing is we'll actually be able to pay you money, which is nice. We're really grateful that we have as many volunteers over these years. It's been phenomenal, so thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. So the next step is for you can do this one of two ways. If you want to just schedule a Zoom call with me and teach me while I'm here and, on the Zoom thing, I'm happy to do it one-on-one. If you want to record yourself teaching, and in the manual that you'll get in the back, you will see okay, so it's lesson 7.2, meet your students where they are. 7.3, safe, secure, and predictable. And 7.4, nervous system reset. So those are 3 little mini teaches you will teach. Again, you can do it live in person with me. You can record it and send it to Rebecca, and then we can schedule the time on Zoom. It's your call, however that works for you. You cannot do it at all. I don't, you know, that's up to you. So the first one is your focus is to adjust your language and movement to accommodate the results of how your words or movements land on the student. Right? So you guys get that, right? The second one is your focus is to use language to keep them in their parasympathetic while practicing something that could be potentially triggering. Okay? And the third piece is your focus is literally synchronized breath movement and bilateral stimulation. So you choose whatever forms or shapes you want to put in that. You can choose whatever that pranayama or the meditation piece is you want to do. You choose that. This is you. And yeah, that's your next step. So it's been wonderful. And let us, yes.
How long should the class be?
Oh, it's 1 to 2 minutes. It's short. Each piece is short, 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Look, I've been doing teacher training a long time. I just need people to say a few words and I can give them feedback. So that's really it. I'm just going to provide you some feedback. Okay. And then you do with the feedback what you will. That's entirely up to you, but I'm happy to provide the feedback. So, anything else? Where are the pieces? Yeah, so that's in the manual too. So that's on page 67. So it's in the manual here, the seated and the standing and the seated, right? So, and these are just, these guys, these are the samples that we have put together because you have to understand in this world, and I know we're over if you can stay, and I didn't talk a lot about, because I ran out of time, I tend to do that, is you gotta be careful of the postures you choose. Yes, Rebecca will send it out to everybody again.
I did. I sent it out again.
Awesome. So you guys should have. So think about it. If you're exposing the most vulnerable parts is your pelvis, right? And that is sadly, that's our center. This is our center. So, you know, I've thought about this really a lot. Not only are you being violated with everything else, your rights and your choices, but this is your center and it's violated in some way. And so be careful to expose that. And so that's why, you know, the variation for a sun salutation is kind of like somewhere between a chair yoga class and a regular class, because think about it, you've got upward facing dog, so you're spreading your chest open, and that may be vulnerable for people. They may not want to be an upward facing dog. You've got to be careful of back bending, and you've got to be careful of opening the pelvis. You have to be careful of lifting the derriere and opening that up for, you know, exposure. You want to be careful of hindering sight, because that's scary. You know, they could have been blindfolded. You don't know exactly what the circumstances are. So you want to be mindful of that. Blankets are a good option for those that are ready to move into some of the more vulnerable poses. A blanket can help give them security and safety, because remember, that's the key. Safety and security is all that really matters that we want to provide our students. So be very mindful of the poses you choose. So I'll show you, if you guys want to see, I'll show you what we call the modified sun salutation. Yeah. So you can see that. Okay. So you would start, you know, here in mountain. Can you see me? So you start here in mountain pose. Inhale, arms up, look up. Exhale, fold. What we did here, everything is pretty contained, right? Inhale, look up a little bit more. Exhale, bend your knees, place your hands on the floor, and you can arrive all the way into plank, because tabletop might be vulnerable for some people. So bring it right into plank, lower maybe all the way down to the floor, or maybe all you have to do is push back into a child's pose like this. You can go ahead, and if you feel that they're ready, you can take them to down dog. But for the most part, they may come up to your group is all the way to the belly, Cobra might be an option for some of your students. Press back to the knees, come into that modified. Walk your feet forward, arrive here. Inhale, look up. Exhale. Inhale, stand up, arms up. And exhale, arms down. The key with the sun salutation is not that you go into the full expression of poses. The key is that you get your spine to move flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion, extension. That's all that the sun salutation is about. What are, and I said it, but I didn't elaborate. What are the 6 movements of the spine? Flexion, extension, lateral, lateral, twist. That's it. Do that. Your hips, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, external rotation, internal rotation. That's it. Do those things every day, you will stay healthy. I don't care what you call it. You can call it yoga, you can call it something else. So, all right, guys, have a great, great day, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome.
You take
Bye.
care. Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Judy.
Awesome, Sean. That's great to hear. I'm very, very, oh, that's so wonderful. All right, bye guys. I'm really happy, Sean. Thank you.